On today's episode of the SPIMA Council podcast, we had on Yoel Haile, a current account manager in global partnerships for Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. This was an awesome conversation. Yoel's very, very experienced in the sports industry. He's a McMaster Commerce alum. He was the founder of the McMaster Sports and Business Association, and we get into that early on in the show. We talk about his experience as an intern with the Hamilton-Tiger Cats, his current role at MLSE within global partnerships, and we dive into the intricacies of what goes on in that position. We also talk about some transferable skills that he's taken throughout his time in the industry that's helped him succeed up until this point. So again, awesome conversation, and a big shout out to Chantal, who made her co-hosting debut in this episode. But for now, I'm gonna stop talking, because if I don't, I'm probably going to spoil the whole episode for you. So make sure you tune in for yet another awesome conversation, because this is the SPIMA Council podcast. How's it going, everyone? Hope everyone's having a fantastic day. I invite you to pull up a chair, sit back and relax, and welcome you to yet another episode of the SPIMA Council podcast. Hope everyone's doing well on this Friday afternoon. Hope you got a chance to listen to our last episode with NHL agent and founder and president of Driven Sports Group, Jason Harshaw. Great episode that you can take a whole host of things from, and this episode is no different. Before we go on to the guest, let's welcome the co-host for this episode. You might recognize her from the first year rep roundtable that we had in the first semester. Chantal, one of SPIMA Council's first year reps. How's it going? And welcome to the show.
I'm doing great, Will. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honestly grateful to have an opportunity to co-host with you today. I love watching the podcast and being on it. So this is great.
Podcast debut as a co-host, not a big deal. Not a big deal. No. Just a casual flex there.
Oh yeah, so
just a casual flex.
Humble brag, like.
You're not bragging. All right. We'll see. Okay, so we had a great guest on for today's recording. We had on Yoel Haile, a McMaster Commerce alumnus and a current account manager in global partnerships. But that's only the tip of the iceberg. With his industry experience, he founded the McMaster Sports and Business Association. He's worked as an intern with the Tiger Cats. He's been in the Blue Jays Leadership Development Program. He's been with Canadian Tire and obviously with MLSE. So the guy's resume reads like a complete laundry list, but the advice and pointers he gave were just invaluable, to say the least. Chantal, what were some of the things you took away from this episode?
Yeah, like you already mentioned, his experience is absolutely incredible. What he's been able to do so early on in his career as well. And I think something that he brought up in this episode talking to us today was the importance of, really building good relationships and staying in touch with them and finding that area of the sport industry that you really love and learning what skills are required for that. And then kind of connecting with your relationships to see where you can go in different positions in different companies. Like he talked about having a curious mindset, and that's something that I want to do now throughout my degree, to stay curious and learn new things and meet new people, all in hopes of building a good career resume for myself.
And going off being curious and constantly learning. He towards the end of the episode, he also talked about he talked about transferable skills and the importance of looking back at your experiences and reflecting what you learned and what best practices you took from them. Really brought an interesting perspective to the show, eh?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, he talked about how he's always been such an interpersonal individual and loves connecting with people. And then, took that from his degree to realize that he wanted to go into the sports industry because he wanted to be in a place that was so, connected to society and different individuals. And I think that's such a great point for a lot of the listeners of the show is that you can have certain skills that you already have within you and utilize them to better your chances at getting specific positions as well.
And a final point I want to bring up, and not to spoil anything, but talk about this guy's initiative. He goes into this program that had probably one sport course, and he decided that it was his niche, and through some key experiences where he possessed an ability to self-start, an entrepreneurial ability. He sort of forged his own path in a program where again, it was a commerce program. It wasn't like a sport specific program like we have we have here at Brock.
Yeah, and I think again that goes to show that he mentions, it doesn't matter necessarily what program you're in. You could be in a business program, a sport management program, but it's about finding that niche and finding what you want and going after it, having that initiative, having the ambition to follow through on your goals. And that's something that Yoel has clearly done for himself very well.
100%. Enough talking from us. I think it's time we send it over to our interview. We hope you guys enjoy. Here's Yoel Haile, account manager in Google partnerships with MLSE. All right, for this episode of the SPIMA Council podcast, we have an awesome guest appearing on the show today. A McMaster Commerce alumni, he spent time with the Ticats, the Blue Jays in their leadership development program, Canadian Tire, and MLSE, where he currently serves as an account manager in global partnerships. Please welcome to the show, Yoel Haile. Welcome, man, and it's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me, William. I'm really excited to be on board here and have some good conversation.
Awesome. Well, let's get right into it. It's the de facto first word of the SPIMA Council podcast. Yoel, what mindset have you adopted to forge a successful career?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest challenge and something that you always try to bring yourself with every single day is really just having a high level of curiosity in the work that you do and in the industry or the field that you're in. So, in this case being obviously the sports and the business industry, and in my case, partnerships. But I think overall, no matter what field you're in, that's kind of been the inspiration and the go-to, methodology that I've had to approach each single day, and just really being curious and trying to learn and understand. I think you can never be an expert in your field. I think there's always opportunity to learn and grow, and leaders that I've been exposed throughout my early career have always, shown that approach and shown their willingness to learn and adapt. And an industry like sports, it's changing every single day. So how can you find new opportunities to grow and really, look to the people around you to help learn and to help challenge yourself.
Mm-hmm. And you make a great point about curiosity, especially when it comes to sport. When you eventually find your industry niche, you at least have to like what you're doing at some point. So if you're not curious, then learning about it is going then learning about about what the job is, or what you're doing is gonna probably end up in this boring repetitive cycle where you develop maybe like a get into the office here, get out at here, and that's that that's that. And it's and it's sort of like the podcast. We always try to at least to push ourselves to the next level in order to improve to improve, because if we don't if we don't keep improving, and if we don't remain curious about like how we can do so, we'd remain stagnant, which with media and especially with sport, that is literally the last thing you want to do. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind in the dust.
No question. And I think it comes up from, for me, curiosity wasn't always like, it was something that I definitely had to adapt to kind of my professional career. Like, I think naturally I'm a very, curious person, and I have that instinct. But I think, the challenge for a lot of students now in university and in, college programs, even in high school early on, when you're starting to think about kind of the next stages of your career and your life, is, what path am I going to take, and how can I apply it to the work that I am doing, and how can I kind of adapt on that. So I think, for me, it was making that adjustment early on, and understanding that, for me, I went to university at McMaster, and I took the business program. But it was finding out what about this business program interests me, and how can I take what I'm learning and applying it to, again, that passionate, curious, kind of curious landscape, and using that to my advantage when it comes to, opportunities or networking, and, different initiatives on the side that I'm working on, similar to the podcast here, which I think you're doing all a great job of.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of started to touch on it, but let's go back kind of early on into that career where you started at McMaster University. And again, you mentioned in a commerce program. So what was your main motivator for finding a niche in the sports industry in itself?
Well, for me, so I, came into school and university at McMaster, and like I said, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and, had always seen these different opportunities. I think school, that the education format is great in a sense of, the real life examples and exposure that it gives you, whether it's, business cases and projects. And I think, as great as it is to have, all the courses that you're taking, and getting that, theory and kind of logic down packed, I think the more valuable component for sure is, being able to work with others, and getting into those experiences that, will transition over to the workplace and to the career life. So I think, early on, I was looking at how my personality and my characteristics and my abilities can kind of translate to a working role. I didn't know anything about partnerships before I stepped into the world that I'm in today. So, during school, I just kind of had to evaluate myself and say, look, this is what I like, and it's sports. But on top of that, this is what I'm, learning from a day to day. I tried to, focus a little bit more on the marketing side, and see what opportunities that could lead me to. So for me, I'm very, interpersonal person. I really pride myself on relationships in my personal life. So why not use that to my advantage to take into a career? And I think I've landed in a spot where I'm really getting an opportunity to use my skill set to my advantage, but also challenge myself on different weaknesses. So, it started off with, okay, I have opportunities within the school, within the program, but again, how can I stretch that on beyond what's in the school, and how can I make a name for myself in a business that I don't really know, I'm not too familiar with, and in one that, I'd love to learn more about. So again, that's kind of where my curiosity tied in.
It's really funny that that a lot of people that are in the sports industry and are graduates of all these great programs. There's a lot of people saying, I didn't know what to do in first year, and that kind of fascinates me. I mean, the average onlooker would probably look at all those resumes, and just say, you didn't know what to do? You didn't know what to do in first year? You're kidding me, right? But it just goes to show, like, how much of a process going through university is. Like, you come in as a complete greenhorn. Possibly knowing minimal people, going outside your typical, you're going outside your high school bubble, and you're thrust into new experiences right away. And from my point of view, I also like talking to people and building relationships. And because of that, I've told this story on the podcast a bunch of times, but it's how I got started. It was sort of just I sort of fell into it face first, when a former president asked for help because he was going on exchange, and I just shot my hand up, not knowing a thing about how to host, how to do recordings, how to edit, how to like even build a brand, for God's sakes. So it's a great process to learn about yourself, learn about your strengths, and the great thing is that you've become aware of those strengths, and that's really a difference maker when especially from the point of view of graduating students like myself. That's a point of differentiation that's going to really help when trying to at least start a career. And going further into your time at McMaster, you took a huge step to be one of the founding members of the McMaster Sports and Businesses Association, where you also served as president there. What was it like to start up a new club in the midst of your degree? And did you have any specific challenges you had to overcome to make that club successful?
Yeah, great question, William. I think, for me, looking on in the beginning of my university days, I was, again, trying to find that fit and see where I kind of, could make myself, visible from a networking standpoint, and really being able to reach out to professionals in an industry that I found fit. So for me at McMaster, working with a couple of my closest peers, going through that experience, like you said, of university and college and anything postgraduate or post high school even, is really like a large scale social learning experience where you get to, like you said, learn about your strengths and weaknesses. So in doing so, I really focused in on my strengths at the time, and since then I've got to pick up on a lot of my weaknesses and continue to do so. But the biggest thing that I noticed when I was in university was there was a gap. There was a gap at McMaster, not similar to Brock University or Ryerson or some of these other schools that have really great backgrounds in terms of sports marketing or sports management. This was really non-existent at McMaster in my time there. So I was there, not to age myself, but from about 2013 to 2017. So
that's not come on, that's not that long ago.
But it was a great experience, and I think what I noticed early on was, hey, look, I can't take a course focused in on sports at McMaster. There's nothing in the business program other than a sports economics course that was kind of an entry-level elective course to take. So how can we elevate McMaster students to feel like they're in the same position as some of these other great schools when it comes to opportunities in the industry? I think students especially don't always take into consideration like other opportunities that are out there. So, whether it's working for a brand or an agency, that it kind of comes into the entire sports environment and the entire ecosystem, it goes much beyond, some of the big teams and the big clubs that are in the GTA and Ontario and across Canada. So finding that gap was really important. So when I had an opportunity to chat with some people in the university, we noticed this gap, and we really took it upon ourselves to stand out. I think one thing that we as new professionals notice in the business is, it's one thing to be a university student and put your name down as leading in a certain initiative, but I think what really sets you apart isn't what you're able to put on your resume, but how you can actually tell that story and be a storyteller in the work that you've accomplished, right? So for us, it was starting something from scratch, having nothing in the ground or running at McMaster University, but having some great examples and great resources from other schools, connecting with peers. That was one of the most valuable components of kind of the entire McMaster Sport Business experience, was reaching out to peers who now work with me in the industry or work alongside me, whether it's at MLSE or elsewhere. So it was really a learning experience to try and find not only the gap, but how we can take full advantage of it and really elevate McMaster's student experience for someone stepping into the school for the first time. If they want to be focused in a little bit more on the sports business or the sports marketing side, how can we give them that platform to be able to do so? So we took it upon ourselves to really run it kind of like a small business. I mean, it's taking full pride and having that entrepreneurial spirit when it comes to setting up events. And I think you both have done that here in the sense of taking that full responsibility and feeling like it's on you to help grow the initiative. It's one thing it's a special opportunity to be able to lead a group of students and have a certain initiative, but it's about having buy-in, really getting a chance to lead in an environment that you're surrounded by a lot of your peers. Is a new challenge that I think students should always take into consideration, and whenever they have that opportunity to be able to do so. But for me and myself and the few others who got to organize this, we thought to ourselves, why not go to this level? We see other schools running great conferences. We see other schools having amazing networking events. Why not us? And why can't we put ourselves in that position? So it was really great to be able to do so. And throughout that journey and throughout that process, not only were we connecting with my peers and the students that were helping build this organization from the ground up, but also a lot of the executives and the professionals that I still have great relationships with to this day.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah, and actually, I think something that's so important about what you're talking about is you don't need to specifically be in a sport management program to get into the industry, right?
100%.
Like, you found this gap at your school to start finding like-minded individuals to get into sport with. And I think for any of our listeners, you can go into a commerce program, you can go into any type of program. Even as a sport management student, I'm taking business courses to learn those fundamental skills that will help regardless of where you go. And also, as a member of the Brock Sport Business Association, as well as Sport Management Council, I see how important the opportunities you get to talk to people who are motivated by the same sport factors and who are inspired and want to get into the industry, how necessary that is to kind of find yourself and get involved. And I definitely take that as such a grateful opportunity that I have through my school. And I'm sure that's something that a lot of people at McMaster are definitely thankful for you and the other members who created that organization as well. And, kind of looking beyond your participation with Sport Business Association at McMaster, you also had a lot of internship opportunities. So you actually got to work as a corporate partnerships position with the Hamilton-Tiger Cats in summer of 2017, I believe. And some of our listeners are actually going into internships in various organizations right now with their time and their degrees. So looking to you, kind of what were some of the strategies that you used to ensure you could maximize the value of that experience with the Ticats?
Definitely. The Hamilton-Tiger Cats experience was an amazing one, just being able to be exposed right off the bat to a professional organization. And Canadian football in Canada is huge, and I think that's a great opening to an opportunity in the business. And like I said, I think people forget that there are other opportunities outside of just team sport, teams and clubs as an organization. But for me, Hamilton was really the opportunity for me to stay close to home, stay close to the university, and really be exposed to something at the national level. So I think a lot of ways that people will tell you how they got their first opportunity or their first crack at a position is really getting a chance to build professional relationships with people and get to know people on a level where they can understand where you're coming from. They can see your work ethic. You've been able to apply your work ethic through school, and especially through those extracurricular opportunities. So for me, that started off with the McMaster Sport Business Association. One of our speakers was actually at the time one of the vice presidents in partnerships and in business operations. So who's now the president of the Tiger Cats. So he really gave us that opportunity and that window where when it came time to interview for a role, you felt like you've made a name for yourself through the work that you've put in. I felt very comfortable going through that interview process. And like I said earlier, I didn't know too much about partnerships going in, other than what's kind of seen on television and what our parents could probably tell us about partnerships. But I think having that marketing background in general was great, but not being exposed entirely to sponsorship marketing was something that I wanted to really take advantage of going into the Ticats opportunity. So for that corporate partnerships experience, for me, as soon as I stepped in, I knew that I had a role to play. The Ticats, the team that I worked on, was a very small team, so I knew instantly, the expectation was there to not only come in and put your nose in and really do the work from day one, but be curious and, like I said, have the mentality to really build relationships, because I think that always will make your job easier, whether it's on a day-to-day, long term, looking back on an internship, having that personal relationship and being able to connect with people genuinely, I think is a really strong characteristic to have. So that was kind of my approach to the entire experience. And there's going to be opportunities where you don't know if you should raise your hand up. And I think what I've always said to people is just constantly, especially in an internship where your days aren't guaranteed past a certain term, really try to make a name for yourself and go above and beyond in terms of the work that you put in. People in the same company can build a certain way of working, and I think is really valuable anytime someone new comes in, regardless of the position that they're in. And I've learned from so many of my leaders and my managers throughout the last few years how valuable it is to have anyone come in as a new set of fresh eyes to be able to evaluate a business. So I think for students that are going into new internship opportunities, like, don't discredit yourself and some of the experiences that you've had, and the ways of thinking that you have. If you have great ideas and think that maybe they've been thought of before, you don't know. Like, you never know until you kind of put your hand out there and see how it's received by your coworkers and your peers. So always put your hand out there. I think that's kind of always been the method for me, and something that's helped me succeed throughout my internship experiences and really going above and beyond my work.
That's a really good perspective to have. Something that that all you fourth year students taking internships right now, that you should really pay attention to. And you touched on the allure of the Ticats, the man for success. We all know from looking at it from an outside perspective, we all know that sports teams or organizations are pushed for a high level of excellence. But it's not until you actually step foot in that organization and start partaking in day-to-day operations that you realize that the bar is sky high. For example, I'm doing an internship at the moment with the Niagara River Lions of the Canadian Elite Basketball League, and already it's just been reviewing business operations, reviewing expectations for work here. And that can be intimidating. And to your point of raising your hands, it's like it can't hurt to do so, because the worst thing that you can do, the worst thing that you can do is when you don't know an answer to the question and you don't ask for help. That's when that's when you could be floundering, and if you're asked about that about that piece of it about that piece of information, it could reflect badly on you in that experience. So going back to your point at the beginning of the show, always being curious, always inquire about things, always be a lifelong learner. And that internship experience that internship experience will be so much better than a one that you're just stagnant and going through the motions, or being petrified of failing. And unfortunately, failing's a part of life, but there is lessons within that are very, very valuable, especially within your first few roles in the sports industry. And going to one of those roles, or your current role in the Global Partnerships Department at MLSE. Although the presence of MLSE is widely known to the general public, can you speak to the scope of relationships that you deal with in this role, and how do you effectively go about managing those relationships?
Definitely, great question. So for me, I came on board to MLSE in July of 2021. So it was really an opportunity for me to, again, go down the path of what I've been working on the last few years, which is really high level, account management and relationship building with a lot of the major partners that work, in our case at MLSE, across a number of our properties. So in my role now, it's really working on the day-to-day, whether it's Toronto FC, the Raptors, the Maple Leafs, the Argos as well. So having that opportunity to connect and kind of be the day-to-day point of contact for partners when they want to execute different marketing campaigns or have anything in stadium that they want to launch. Of course, pre-COVID in a lot of cases, and hopefully we can get back to that pretty soon. But
fingers crossed.
Hopefully, it's really one where I think now going forward, it's about how can we navigate different difficult conversations. In your personal life, certain things come up, and you have to be able to communicate well with those around you. And I think a lot of that can be said in the work that our team and myself do specifically. It's really engaging with high level customers, clients who really invest in our business because they know that they can't get this access through a marketing campaign that isn't tied to the Raptors or the Maple Leafs, and connecting with our fan base. So for me, it's always been about that, and really getting a chance to talk to marketers and talk to brands who are interested in tapping into this field. And I think it's really special to be able to sit in a meeting and represent an organization that has so much backing and has accomplished so much, not only from a commercial side, but also in the work that we've done in the community. So I think MLSE as a whole is really focused on that, and has shown that time and time again, and really has shown and outlined these plans to partners going forward. So for myself, it puts me in a comfortable spot knowing the organization that I'm representing when I have conversations with partners. And if they come up with new ideas, how can we take their ideas and either launch it or put a spin on it to even advance it further, so that it's something that we can report back to them with as an opportunity that we took full advantage of and connected to our fans, whether it's in Ontario or across Canada and even the world.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing that you speak so highly of your position at the organization, because I know even in our first year lectures, we talk about the MLSE and kind of the positive influence it has on the nation and, in sport in general, and what it does both for the community through MLSE Launchpad and for the professional sports as well. And I mean, kind of off the record, MLSE is one of the reasons why I chose sport management. So I'm, really grateful to be here talking to you today too. But I think, again, as you mentioned, those relationships and just continuing to build them as you go through your career is so pivotal for our industry, because it can really help you get into positions and make connections with people from different sectors. And I think with that too, you've had a lot of experience through different industry sectors. And I know we've mentioned earlier in the show with Tiger Cats, now MLSE, Blue Jays, Canadian Tire. So throughout your career in the industry, can you name, if any, some of the transferable skills that you've used to easily adapt to each new position you've been in?
Definitely. Great question. I think, for me, it's always been about, like I said, having that relationship building skill set. But then at the end of the day, like there's nothing more valuable than those experiences and having those, opportunities come up where you're managing client relationships. And in my case, at least, and, giving the opportunity to think of new creative opportunities for brands to have. I think what's unique about some of the positions that I've had is that a lot of them have been focused on learning at the same time. So, in my experience at the Blue Jays, not only was I a corporate partnerships kind of day-to-day staff member working on a number of our accounts, but I also got the opportunity to work as part of the Toronto Blue Jays Leadership Development Program, which was essentially one student and one employee being selected to represent per department at the Blue Jays, and really being a part of this larger scale initiative where we're reporting and kind of being this elevated level of interns to the company, where we get to work with a lot of the different staff across the company and then present to the business leadership team at different points in the year. So for me, going from the Blue Jays from the Hamilton-Tiger Cats, obviously there are several changes, and working now in a business where the US comes into play. And I think that was really special for me to just be exposed to that and see how that, the brands that we're working with are at such an international scale that, you really have to sell on the fact that Canada is part of the Blue Jays, and the Blue Jays kind of represent the whole country. So that was a great adjustment for me to learn from. And then going over to the brand side, I think that was really what set my eyes open to what the other side of sponsorship marketing really looks like. So, having the opportunity to work at Canadian Tire was a special one for me, albeit entirely virtual in 2021. But getting the opportunity to work on the Tokyo 2020 Games planning with Canadian Tire being the national presenting partner for Team Canada was extremely special to just see how a lot of the work goes into play, and a lot of the decision making that comes from a major brand like Canadian Tire Corporation. So that was my kind of big learning point and turning point for me to really be exposed to what the customer thinks about on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's really valuable, because when you get to sit on the other side of a table of talking to sponsors, and now being a sponsor and working on a team that advertises across a number of properties across Canada, I think having that experience helps with managing those conversations. When challenging times come up, whether it's COVID or team performance, I think you can have those conversations much easier, knowing and being able to manage expectations. And again, moving over to my experience now at MLSE, I think what's also been able to transfer really well is kind of just that experience, like I said, of being live at games. I've had the opportunity to be a part of a variety of in-stadium activations, and having seen what a game looks like at Tim Hortons Field versus at Rogers Center versus now in my role at BMO Field and Scotiabank Arena. It's how can I take some of the best practices and key learnings from each of those roles and really apply them to my current role, whether it's partners having questions about a way that they can better activate in stadium, or a digital campaign that they want to be able to execute, and giving them and showing them the right kind of set of options to make sure that their objectives are being met. So I think a lot of these transferable skills really can be built in university. And I think for me, in between some of these jobs, it took me to really go above and beyond in my networking ability to try and get that next position. For a long time I was getting contract roles where you finish a term and you can have a really great experience there, and still it's based on decisions that kind of are out of your control to be able to get that next role at a company. So how can you take on that personality of being yourself and constantly being genuine, but aggressively trying to reach out to people that you think are not only because they work at a great company and one that interests you, but how can you carefully, specifically go to individuals who you think will help help you in your quest to learn or to get that next position in a specific field. So a lot of these traits, I feel like when people ask me how my current role is, I feel like I was doing a lot of these account manager, relationship building roles as early as my days at McMaster when I was helping out with the Sport Business Association. So I can see a lot of those traits, whether it's networking or planning events, reaching out and having conversations with senior executives. A lot of that has transitioned to throughout all of my positions. So I think, whenever there's opportunities for students to, go to an event, you want to make sure that you're going in with a focus and a mindset of, why does this matter to me? What am I trying to get out of this? And, am I looking to maintain and build this relationship? Because I think, a lot of students can do a great job of reaching out to people and having a great one-on-one conversation. But what are you doing to take the next step and making sure that you're maintaining that relationship so that, 6 months from now, if an opportunity comes up or you just want to catch up, having that opportunity to go back to someone and feel comfortable enough to reach out to someone is extremely important. And I think at the same time too, you're just putting yourself out there as someone who can show their ability to manage and build relationships in the industry. So, if there's an opportunity that comes up for a company and, they can remember you as someone who was eager and willing and has put in the work through a variety of experiences, then I think you put yourself in a really good position.
100%. And you make a great point about best practices and prior experiences. It's worth your while to look back and when you're questioning, like, am I qualified enough for this role? You can look back at your experiences and realize that, unbeknownst to me, I actually got quite proficient in this skill or this skill, and I learned best practices from this location, just like you did with the Tie Cats, with the Blue Jays, and you just transferred it over to MLSE, and that relies on the your ability to, again, just be curious and be a lifelong learner. But it's really worthwhile to look back, see what you've accomplished, and figure out what skills do I have at the table that I can easily bring over to this job. And you may realize that there's a lot more than you can expect. But on that note, look at Yoel, this was an awesome conversation, and we thank you for taking time out of your evening to be on the show, to be on the latest episode of the podcast. But it is tradition around the SPEMA Council podcast to give the guest the floor to end her off, to say what's on their mind, or anything that they might have forgot to say, or just an excuse to shoot the breeze a little while longer. So, Yoel, thank you again for joining the show, and the floor is yours.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I just want to again say thank you to the both of you for arranging such a great podcast. And I think it's, like I said, it's one that when you're working on this on a day-to-day in your university time, it's one that you might not see as much in the big picture. But I think looking back, there's so many valuable experiences you can take from having initiative. At the end of the day, no one is telling you to get up and make a podcast, and that's not, that's a decision you make on your own. And I think a lot of that applies to the point where you get to those positions, you can find that initiative and you have that self-driven mentality to be able to put in the work. So great work here. And I think it's, from here on out, it's really just about challenging yourself further and finding those next opportunities and finding those people to help you reach that next step. So well done.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks again, man.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.